Young people from pre-teens to mid-teens generally know little of love, and those that do usually know the wrong kind of love born from traumatic events. So when a young person dies as a result of, according to a much older perpetrator, unrequited love, it hits hard because they are being punished for something that they can scarcely understand. In 2016, two young friends were innocently heading home from school when they were set upon by an evil neither of them had invited. We're heading to Wichita Falls in Texas for the cruel and tragic story of Lauren Landavazo. This is Murder of Crows. Wichita Falls is a city in and the county seat of Wichita County, Texas. It is the principal city of the Wichita Falls Metropolitan Statistical Area, which encompasses all of Archer, Clay, and Wichita counties. And according to the 2020 census, it had a population of 102,316, making it the 43rd most populous city in Texas. What a useless stat for you there. Wichita Falls is home to Midwestern State University, enrolling more than 5,500 students. From the early 18th century to the mid-19th century, the Wichita Falls area was inhabited by the Wichita and the Comanche people. The Spanish called the lands controlled by the Comanche as Comancheria. The Wichita were forced onto a reservation in Oklahoma after 1859. The last battle with the Comanche in this area occurred in 1872, and the Comanche were finally defeated in 1874. Anglo-American presence in the area began in the 1860s. The future city was platted and named Wichita Falls on September the 27th, 1876, as the Wichita River runs through the area, and a waterfall was in the river's course in 1876. The first permanent resident arrived in 1879. In 1886, a flood destroyed the original waterfall on the Wichita River, for which the city was named. The city built an artificial waterfall in 1987 beside the river in Lucy Park. The recreated falls are 54 feet high, or 16 meters. An F4 tornado struck the heavily populated southern sections of Wichita Falls in the late afternoon on Tuesday, April the 10th, 1979, known as Terrible Tuesday. It was part of an outbreak that produced 30 tornadoes around the region. Despite having nearly an hour's advance warning that severe weather was imminent, 42 people were killed, including 25 in vehicles, and 1,800 were injured because it arrived just as many people were driving home from work. It left 20,000 people homeless and caused $400 million in damages, a US record not topped by an individual tornado until the F5 Moore, Oklahoma City tornado of May 3rd, 1999. But in 2016 it was an internal maelstrom that brought shock and horror to and through the city. It was just a little after 3 p.m. on the Friday before Labor Day weekend, September the 2nd, 2016. Best friends Lauren Landavazo and Makayla Smith, both 13 years old, were walking home from their middle school in Wichita Falls, Texas. It was the same route they took every day, chatting and laughing in the ways that best friends do. And these were best friends who had an inseparable bond. If they weren't together, then they were texting one another non-stop, despite living in the same area. Of course, any parent of a teenage girl will know that this kind of thing is completely normal. So, walking together without a care in the world, they rounded a corner and were about to go into an alleyway, when suddenly a gold car, one neither of them recognized, screeched to a stop next to them. And what happened next was the stuff of nightmares. But let's backtrack a little and look at the girls more closely. Lauren Landavazo was extremely close to her parents, Vernon and Bianca. She was the youngest of 3 siblings and was the only girl. After her brothers Jordan and Tim had been born, her parents thought that they were done having kids. So when Lauren came along 10 years later, everyone was shocked, but ultimately thrilled at this second wave of parenthood. And she'd grown into a kind, compassionate, animal-loving young teen who was not embarrassed to show affection. She wasn't a huge fan of school in terms of the work, but when the time came to it, she always knuckled down and achieved grades, making all those around her very proud. Outside of Makayla, she was popular and even had a boyfriend named Donovan Cheek. Donovan felt the same way about her as all of her friends, that she was definitely someone you just loved being around. Now, Makayla lived in the same neighborhood as Lauren, and the two had become inseparable. She came from an extremely religious family, the 3rd child of 4, with 2 older brothers and a younger sister. Just like Lauren, she was kind and smart. They say that birds of a feather flock together, and you often see teenagers gravitate towards similar people. And this was certainly true of Lauren and Makayla. Something like peas in a pod, really. That Friday morning had been no different from every Friday that had come before it. Lauren's dad had the day off work, so he was going to spend the day running errands and catching up on jobs around the house, ready for the Labor Day weekend. The girls had met up and walked to school again, just as they did every day. And the day had passed with no concerns, a perfectly normal day. Leaving school at 3:05 p.m, they began the short walk home, which, as I said earlier, included an alleyway. But this was an alleyway used by all the neighborhood kids as a shortcut home. Now, the gold car screeching up to their side had made them stop and look as it would. And behind the wheel was a young-looking guy who initially just stared at them up and down and very intently. A little creeped out, but figuring he meant no harm, the girls began walking again. And within seconds, the sound of repeated gunshots filled the afternoon air. 16 shots to be precise, 1 to Makayla and 15 to Lauren. It's clear from this that Lauren was the intended target. Makayla, the first to be shot, managed to stagger and start running for her life despite the intense pain from the bullet that had hit her in the chest and the blood running down her body. The instinct to flee had just taken over, but she soon realized that her friend wasn't running with her. and she turned to see Lauren lying in a crumpled heap on the ground. Screaming for help, she ran towards other kids also on their way home from school. Falling to her knees in front of them, they all saw the gold SUV speed away. Calling out to Lauren, she hoped and prayed that she would hear a noise, any sort of noise, from her best friend. But instead there was only silence. Unsure as to whether she herself would be alive much longer, she managed to take out her phone and call her mother. Speaking very quietly, she managed to whisper, "Mommy, I've been shot and Lauren isn't moving." Now, the shooting had happened so close to the school that the repeated gunshots had been heard from inside, and understandably panic ensued, and teachers began scrambling to get any of the children who were still on the school grounds to safety, unsure whether there was an active shooter on the actual school premises.
Ambulance, may I help you?
I need an ambulance to 5143 Kingston. There is a young lady that is laying on the ground and she does not appear to be conscious.
Is she breathing right now?
No.
Okay. Can you touch her and tell me if she's cold to the touch or if she's warm?
If you call her, is she warm? I don't know, I just called her.
Did they tell you who did it?
No, they said it was called SUV.
With ambulances rushing to the scene, Bianca, who was Lauren's mother, had received a call from a friend telling her that there was a school shooting and that some students had been shot. A little vague and woolly, but with Lauren not yet home, a sinking feeling settled into Bianca's stomach. She raced to the scene on foot, hoping to bump into the girls en route. Vernon, Lauren's dad, jumped into his truck and sped towards the school. He would later say that he kept thinking over and over that out of the 1,000 students there was no way it could be Lauren amongst the people who had been shot. Devastatingly, as Bianca reached the end of the alleyway, she was confronted by the sight of paramedics working furiously on her daughter. Her screams echoed through the streets, with witnesses saying that they would be forever haunted by the animalistic sound of the wails and screams. She called Vernon, still screaming, and in that moment he knew. Pulling up to the scene, he saw his only daughter lying in a pool of her own blood on the cold, hard ground. Police and paramedics swarmed the area, meaning the two parents could not get close to their daughter. They could see Makayla being loaded into the ambulance, but couldn't understand why they weren't doing the same to Lauren. The nightmare only truly became real when a white sheet was placed over Lauren's broken body. The medical examiner would later determine that not only was death very evidently a homicide, but that she had sustained 15 bullet wounds from a .22 caliber rifle. She'd been shot in the hands, chest, through her liver, spinal column and shoulder. However, 2 of the shots had been to her head, one of which was deemed to have been the fatal shot. It was estimated that her shooter had fired from around 3 feet away. Makayla had been taken to the hospital. Her parents raced to her bedside. Rushing her into surgery, the doctor found the bullet had gone into her chest, but realised if he removed it, it may actually cause more harm than good. So the decision was made to leave it exactly where it was, and hope that her body would, over time, start shifting its position to a place that would make removal safer. To this day, that still hasn't happened, and is clearly a devastating physical reminder of the worst day of her life. Makayla's hospital room was being guarded by officers while other officers began the hunt for Lauren's unknown killer. Thankfully, despite the bullet not being removed, Makayla was awake and stable enough to make a statement, which included describing the shooter. She told investigators he was a white male, young with shaggy brown hair, a big nose and acne. Police Chief Manuel Borrego held a press conference asking members of the community to remain vigilant, and if anyone had any information, however insignificant it seemed, to come forward, and specifically asking for any surveillance footage. The witnesses at the scene and Makayla's fairly detailed description were also enough for them to release a composite sketch of the perpetrator to the public. As you can imagine, the community was shattered, their entire sense of security broken, while there was a known killer on the loose. The entrance to the alleyway had become almost a memorial to Lauren, and for Makayla's recovery as well. Flowers and gifts were left. Parents were scared to let their kids go there alone, lest the killer return. Wichita Falls Crime Stoppers put out a $2,500 reward for any information that led to the shooter. But this is where small-town communities rally together, because local businesses, along with regular townfolk, banded together and were able to fundraise enough to increase the reward to $8,500. Bianca, Lauren's mother, took to Facebook and essentially addressed the killer, calling him an SOB who would be found and would be made to pay. She also asked for people to remember that Lauren's boyfriend had been severely impacted by her death also. Makayla's family pleaded with the public to come forward if anyone knew anything. It wasn't lost on them that they could very easily be in the exact same position that the Landavazo family were right at that moment. And tips did start coming in. But as is often the case, a lot of the tips were either from local crazies or was information that didn't actually lead anywhere, but every tip had to be followed up. Now, if you know enough about true crime, you'll know that the first 48 hours is the most crucial in any investigation. And Lauren's case proved that. Almost 48 hours to the minute, a call came into the tip line that was worth listening to. A concerned citizen had called in saying that she'd seen the composite sketch of the shooter and needed to tell them about something that she had seen on the day of the murder. One of her neighbours at the Fountain Gate apartment building not only matched the sketch and description, but on the afternoon of the murder, she'd seen him arrive home, looking both nervous and agitated, and carrying what appeared to be a rifle case. She also told the investigators that the car he owned was a gold SUV, of which she'd written down the license plate. And chillingly, the Fountain Gate apartment building was literally just yards away from the alleyway that Lauren had been shot dead in. And just then another call came in. It was from a couple who had just seen a young man pull up and park near the makeshift memorial site. And he was driving a gold SUV. Now, this was happening in real time, and how many gold SUVs are there going to be in the area? So officers dropped everything and raced down to the alleyway. But as they arrived, they saw the gold SUV heading in the opposite direction to them. Quickly checking the license plate number from the tip line caller, and seeing that it was a match, they turned their car around and caught up to the SUV. They signalled for the driver to stop, which he duly did, and when officers approached, they found the driver to be a young white male with shaggy brown hair, a large nose, and acne. Things were coming together. They asked him to step out of the vehicle and for permission to search it. With no air of worry, he readily agreed. The registration of the car came back as belonging to 20-year-old Cody Austin Lott's stepfather. As officers were searching the car, it was very evident to them that the vehicle had just recently been thoroughly cleaned. Not illegal, obviously, but with their suspicions that this was probably the killer's car, it was certainly noted in their minds as being something of interest. But the search actually revealed nothing pertaining to Lauren's shooting. However, one of the officers found a pair of brass knuckles, which was good news in the great scheme of things, because brass knuckles were illegal in Texas at the time, meaning they had legitimate grounds to arrest this kid and take him in for questioning. Had they not found them, they would most likely have had to let him be on his way. Cody Lott was immediately placed under arrest and charged with possession of a deadly weapon, which alone can carry either a large fine or jail time. And once they had him in the interrogation room, they began grilling him about the shooting. Slumped against the back wall, baseball cap covering his shaggy brown hair, he feigned ignorance, saying he knew nothing about it. But then after a little more pressure, he said, "Okay, I didn't do it, but I know who did." Which they were keen to point out seemed odd, considering that they had plenty of witnesses putting both him and his car at the scene. He all but perfectly matched the description given. But when they later mentioned how senseless the murder seemed, he had become so comfortable in that interrogation room that his arrogance took over, and indignantly he said it wasn't senseless. In fact, he'd carefully planned out the whole thing with the help of the devil. However bizarre this statement, it was at least a confession. It had all started when one day Cody had seen Lauren walk past his apartment. Taken by her beauty, he would wait by his window every day at the time that school got out, so that he could gaze longingly at her from a distance. A 20-year-old man drooling over a 13-year-old girl. Kinda gives me the ick, I am not gonna lie. Bleh. But anywho, over the next year he had built up the fantasy more and more that she was his. He'd had girlfriends in the past, but none lasted very long. His unrealistic debates had driven each girl away. Which is when he had built the imaginary world where he and Lauren were committed to one another. Until one day his love turned to hate and rage in an instant. As usual, he had taken his place at the window when Lauren appeared, but she was not alone. She was hand in hand with a boy who looked to be around the same age as she was. There and then he decided that because of this act of betrayal, she needed to pay. This 13-year-old girl, who had no idea Cody Lott even existed, was about to pay the ultimate price for simply being her. The morning of the shooting, he'd gotten stoned on marijuana laced with PCP, as you do, and on top of that had taken 80 milligrams of a prescribed opioid. Not that this wasn't a regular occurrence for him. Although now 20, he'd been taking opioids and smoking pot since he was 13. He had then taken one of the rifles from his stepdad's cabinet and waited. When Lauren and Makayla had come into view, he ran over to his car, jumped in, and as we know, pulled up to them as they were approaching the alleyway before screeching to a halt. He used the first shot on Makayla, as he'd wanted the rest to all go to Lauren. What a wank badger. And then finally, with his round spent, he had no choice but to get the heck out of there. Chillingly, he said that's the only reason Makayla survived. If he hadn't been so hell-bent on firing at Lauren, he would have had more bullets for Makayla. Sickeningly, he had been telling the investigators all of this in a chilling manner, when he suddenly switched tacks and became quite animated. He declared that actually he was a bit of a hero. Why is that, we wonder? Because by killing Lauren, he had saved her from the dangers she would have faced later in life. Fuck me. In his warped and twisted mind, by killing her at a young age, he had rescued her from the inevitable hands of rapists and the like. He and the devil agreed that by taking her life now, she'd be spared from the evil that lay in the years ahead. All right then. Attempting to bring him back to some semblance of reality, investigators asked him where he'd gone and what he had done after the shooting. He told them he had panicked, so had taken the rifle and dumped it in a nearby field. But then after getting home, he panicked again, realizing that his stepdad would notice the gun missing. So when the coast was clear, he'd gone back to the field, retrieved the rifle, brought it home, and put it back exactly where he'd gotten it from. Although investigators had heard his explanation of his infatuation with Lauren, they were struggling to wrap their heads around it. So Cody repeated, excitedly and animatedly, saying that it was simple. He wanted a girlfriend and thought Lauren was the perfect girl for him. However, when he realized that she already had a boyfriend, he decided that if he couldn't have her, no one would. But here's where the already batshit story gets stranger still. The devil he had allegedly consulted with turned out to be Mr. Scratch, the king of the netherworld. Cody had been having doubts, but when Mr. Scratch told him that Lauren needed to pay, his doubts disappeared, and the assassination, as he called it, went ahead as planned. Based on what he told them about putting the rifle back in his stepdad's cabinet, a search warrant for his parents' house was obtained, and detectives duly made their way to the apartment. Not only did they find the rifle covered in dirt and grass, but a search of Cody's electronic devices, specifically his phone, revealed he had a number of images of underage girls performing sexually explicit acts. One child featured was only 8 years old. A charge of possession of child pornography was immediately added to his list of current charges. What a dirty, nasty bastard. Despite his initial confession, Cody pled not guilty on all counts because of course he did. He was held on a $4 million bail awaiting trial. And as his family didn't have that kind of money, thankfully he was kept off the streets while awaiting his court date. And during that time, investigators began building the case. And by then, news of Cody's arrest had obviously spread. People that knew him weren't surprised in the least, especially his ex-girlfriend, Haley Clayton.
The question on everyone's mind as we struggle to process the senseless shootings this weekend of 2 teenage girls is why. You're watching News Channel 6 at 6. I'm Ashley Fitzwater. Chris Horgan has the night off. Authorities say the shooter, Cody Austin Lott, is in custody and confessed to the murder of Lauren Landavazo and the shooting of Makayla Smith. But who is Lott? One person says she knows. News Channel 6 Ava Van Valen spoke with Cody Lott's ex-girlfriend, and Ava, she says that she's been harassed by him for years.
Yes, Ashley. Haley Clayton says she started dating Lott in 2010. She says they dated for 2 years, and throughout the relationship, he physically abused her. She says after their breakup, he started a campaign of harassment that continued up until last Friday morning, the day of the shootings.
I had a seatbelt wrapped around my throat. He pushed me downstairs, busted my head on the dash of his car that he had then, and it was just a really abusive relationship.
Haley Clayton is describing some of the abuse she claims she suffered at the hands of her ex-boyfriend, Cody Austin Lott. She met Lott when they were both students at Archer City High School in 2010. She was a sophomore and says they dated for 2 years.
The entire second year of our relationship, he was really abusive.
In 2012, she moved to Colorado to live with her mother, and Lott moved with her. But she says within a month, he was displaying such abusive behavior in front of her family that her mother bought him a bus ticket back to Texas, and they broke up.
And I stayed up there for a year because I was scared to come back because he kept threatening to kill me then.
She moved back to Texas her senior year in 2013. She says she was in a new relationship with her current fiance and had a baby. She says that's when the harassment began. She says Lott started threatening her, her child, and her fiance's lives.
He said that he was going to catch us out and about, and he was going to make us wreck our vehicles, and he was going to kill us and torture us.
She says she went to the Archer City Police Department to get a restraining order, but she says they said they couldn't help her. Every few months, she says they would get harassing text or calls. She had blocked Lott from her phone and Facebook, but he was still able to text her fiance because she says they wanted to keep a paper trail of the threats and harassment. Lott sent this threatening text to Clayton's fiance at 10:22 a.m. Friday, the day of the shootings.
Saying that he wanted to kidnap all three of us and have my fiance and torture my son and I in front of him and make him watch.
She said because of Lot, she's lived in constant fear for not only her life, but that of her fiancé and son. She says her heart breaks for the victims and families of the tragic shooting. And sadly, she says she wasn't too surprised when she heard Lot had been arrested.
His entire life, he wanted to hurt people. That was like his life goal, was to hurt people because he was sad or mad or whatever.
I contacted the Archer City Police Department to find out about Haley's claim regarding the restraining order. I've not heard back from them yet, but we'll bring you an update as soon as it's available. Ava Van Valen, News Channel 6.
All right, thank you, Ava. Cody Lott's dad is also speaking out about the tragic shooting of those 2 teenage girls. He told us today he does not have words that can take away the pain those families are feeling. He adds he's in shock and ashamed for what his son has done. Cody's father also calls the crime a true nightmare.
The pair had met in high school and had dated for almost 2 years. Haley, with her mother's help, was eventually able to break up with him. He went back to Texas and Haley stayed in Colorado for another year. Thinking she was safe once back in Texas, she began dating a guy whom she got engaged to and had a baby boy with, which not only did Cody find out about, but he also got mad about. Haley said that Cody became threatening, saying he was going to find them when they were out, cause them to crash their car, and then torture and kill them. She'd then tried to get a restraining order, but the local police hadn't helped her. Despite blocking him on her social media and her phone, every few months they would get harassing texts or calls, because although she had blocked him, her fiancé hadn't, for the simple reason that he wanted to keep a paper trail of Cody's threats and harassment. In fact, his last threatening text to Haley's fiancé was at 10:22 a.m. on Friday, September the 2nd, 2016, the morning of the shootings. He had allegedly texted saying he wanted to kidnap all 3 of them and then torture Haley and their son while making her fiancé watch. Fuck me. Despite the community still reeling, they knew that while they waited for Cody's trial, they needed to put him out of their minds for now and focus on Makayla's recovery and helping Lauren's family with their grief. 1,000 blue ribbons lined the main street through the town, which was Makayla's favourite colour. At the girls' middle school, staff and students wore purple items, which was Lauren's favourite colour. Grief counselling was also offered to the students. A number of donations were also set up, one for Lauren's funeral and one for Makayla's hospital bills. Then after those things had been covered, the Landavazo family said if people still wanted to donate, to give it to other local charities, especially animal charities, which was something close to Lauren's heart. Another way of paying tribute to Lauren and acknowledging Makayla's ongoing struggles. A statue of a black horse was placed on the grounds of McNeil Middle School. The words love, laugh, live and unique were written on the sides, surrounded by purple and blue paw prints. The perfect tribute for a girl who had always shown nothing but love and kindness to both animals and humans alike. Then, with Cody still locked away in March of 2017, a fight for a new law to be passed began. It was to be called Lauren's Law. The aim of the new law was that if anyone murdered someone under the age of 15, then they should automatically be given the death penalty or life in prison without parole. Incidentally, back in 2011, it had been raised from 6 years old to 10 years old. But now Lauren's family was championing for it to be raised to the age of 15. Sadly, we all know that the wheels of justice can move very slowly, and before long the 1-year anniversary of Lauren's murder came around. A memorial was held at one of her favourite places, the local water park, where her friends and family gathered and enjoyed a day doing what she had loved to do. The water park donated their admission fees from that day to various animal charities.
Today is the 1-year anniversary of the death of 13-year-old Lauren Landavazo, who was shot and killed walking home from school in Wichita Falls. Good evening, I'm Danielle Malagary. The teen and her friend Makayla Smith were leaving McNeil Middle School when a gunman shot them both, killing Lauren and injuring Makayla. That day shook the community and is one many will never forget. Lauren's loved ones are making sure her legacy lives on as we honor the young life that was taken too soon with the first ever Lauren Landavazo Day in Wichita Falls. Sarah Hines has more from Castaway Cove Water Park, where Lauren's friends and family came together earlier today.
Danielle, this was one of Lauren's favorite places to come to growing up. Her dad tells me that she and him used to come to the water park all the time. And now she was honored today with family and friends coming, a lot of them wearing these purple bracelets that I have on to honor her legacy of live, laugh, and love. Friends and family of Lauren Landavazo tell me she always had them laughing.
In the mornings I would get to McNeil and she would always be sitting with her and we would wait for like the bell to ring and like laugh and stuff. And so like jokes about like I guess our weekends and stuff like that.
A little ham actress, even at an early age. She knew how to put on a show.
Could make her cry at the drop of a hat by saying Bubbles. I don't know what it was about Bubbles. You could point to her dog and say Bubbles and she would howl.
A year ago, her life was lost in a tragic shooting, a parent's worst nightmare. But today, with hugs, purple bracelets, and a signed picture of her and her dad, Vern Landavazo, her memory lives on.
When you lose a child, you just don't ever want people to forget it. And I know that anybody who was here that day will never forget what happened, and they'll never forget Lauren. But it's just so important to us to be able to see that people still love her, still remember her.
Those who love her most know that with the help from the Wichita Falls community, her spirit lives on.
The people that were touched by her to come out here and remember her and celebrate her life, that really is what gets us through the days, is the support we get from family and friends.
Complete strangers really touch my heart. So that's her special magic.
Seeing the purple like around some neighborhoods like on the trees, like the purple ribbons and stuff, just makes me think of her.
Lauren's parents want to see their daughter's memory continue through others.
To be able to laugh and love and live, and everything that goes into that, and realizing that that has nothing to do with material things. It's really about people and relationships and enjoying the natural beauty and the diversity in the world. Lauren was great at that. It's reflected in her friends, the people that knew her, just so many people that are touched by her. But we like that spirit, and that laugh, love, live seems to capture that the best.
Sarah Hines, News Channel 6.
Our thoughts are with that family, and tonight there was also a balloon release in Lauren's honor in the parking lot of McNeil Middle School.
A few months later, in early 2018, the families got word that a tentative trial date for Cody Lott had been set for March. But in a blow, his lawyers were successful in having it delayed on the basis that Cody had been deemed by a mental health expert to be presently incompetent to stand trial. The court ordered further competency evaluations to be carried out within 30 days, and a new trial date was subsequently set for September the 10th, 2018, almost 2 years to the day. When the trial finally commenced, District Attorney Maureen Shelton and Chief Prosecutor Ron Poole laid out to the jury that Cody Lott was a calculating killer who had stalked his young victim for a year prior to taking her life, with her not even knowing who he was. They made the point that Makayla too would have died on the cold ground that day had the monster not run out of ammunition. It was a calculated, planned attack. And when he wasn't apprehended at the scene, he hid the weapon, then retrieved it and put it back where he had got it from. Then 48 hours later, when he'd been apprehended, he had purposely been evasive yet coherent. Not insane as the defense wanted them to believe. His actions showed he knew right from wrong. The prosecution called the girls' classmates to the stand, who testified that at first they thought it was firecrackers, until they saw Lauren falling to the ground, and Makayla running back towards them, screaming. And they also called their star witness, a now 15-year-old high school student, Makayla. Makayla described everything leading up to the moment that hers and Lauren's lives changed forever. She said that as the car pulled up, she made eye contact with Cody. He then reached down for what we now know was the weapon. The next thing she knew, she saw the gun being pointed at her. As she tried to turn and run, she remembered the feeling of being shot, but not quite sure where, although she remembered struggling to breathe. Then she continued, and as she ran, she heard more gunshots echoing behind her, convinced that at any moment she would feel herself get hit again. But as she reached her classmates, she very quickly realized that all those other shots were for Lauren and Lauren only. Makayla told the court how she kept screaming Lauren's name, but Lauren wasn't shouting back. She then made the call to her mother that I mentioned earlier. Her testimony over, she left the courtroom, and the jury were then shown graphic photos of Lauren's autopsy, her blood-stained clothing and jewelry, and the bullet fragments still covered in her blood and hair. But the prosecution still weren't done at that point. They then played 2 audio recordings for the jury. One was from Cody to his mother while in jail. His stepdad had answered and said that Christy was busy and couldn't come to the phone. But ultimately she did come on the line where Cody told her that he had been arrested on the murder of that girl. Not only that, but that he had confessed to it. Christy asked if he'd done it. He said yes. She repeated, "Did you do it or just confess to doing it?" And he repeated that he had done it. The second audio was from inside the patrol car where Cody could be heard whispering. And he was whispering for forgiveness from Jesus. He could be heard saying, "Please, Jesus, forgive me. Please forgive me in the name of Jesus." The defense, in turn, knew that the biggest card they could play was Cody's mental health. They called to the stand the original psychologist who had said he wasn't fit to stand the March 2018 trial date, Dr. Brian Falls. They were hoping that with his testimony they could prove that Cody was legally insane at the time of the crime. He said that when he had evaluated him, he agreed with the diagnosis that Cody had been given after a standoff at his grandmother's house back in 2015, a diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder. Essentially, he contradicted everything Dr. Price, who had testified for the prosecution, had said. As well as stating that the day before the murder, Cody had allegedly heard voices in his head telling him to enjoy the murder and that it would be worth it, they argued that he was a victim of his intrusive thoughts. Both sides rested their cases. Would the jury believe he was legally insane or not? And that's what it would boil down to. This wasn't about whether he'd done it, but rather should he be held responsible. After reviewing all the evidence and testimony that they'd been given, on September the 19th, 2018, after only 40 minutes of deliberation, the jury returned their verdict. Cody Lott was found guilty on 1 count of first-degree murder and 1 count of aggravated assault, that being the attempted murder of Makayla. In the lead-up to sentencing, victim impact statements were read, and Vernon's, Lauren's dad's, was heartbreaking. He stood before the court and looked directly at Cody, with him saying, "Cody, look at me. As I sat here and listened to you talk, this was the first time I'd ever heard your voice. The only time I had ever seen your face before was in the mugshot, and then in the pre-trial hearings that we would go to. When I saw you in that mugshot, when I saw you in court, you looked evil, you looked hateful, you looked twisted. Look at me, please. You looked twisted, you looked evil. I had no pity on you. All I could think about was what you took from us, who you took from us. After you went for some treatment while you were being held, while you were gone, while you were being medicated, while people were trying to help you, when you came back into court for the next hearing after that, when you walked into the room, immediately I was struck by the difference that I saw in you, that I saw in your face. And as I watched you that day, and I watched you sit in court and listen to the seriousness of what you had done, it seemed to me that you finally had a realization of what you had done. And to me you looked like a scared, lost little boy who was grasping for hope. You couldn't help but be touched by that, to feel pity for you, for what you had done to be that twisted inside, that emptiness, that lack of anything good, that you could do something like that. Despite myself, I felt ashamed of myself. I felt ashamed of myself for feeling pity for you. I didn't even tell my wife. I didn't tell Bianca that I felt that way. I didn't find out till last night that Bianca also felt those same things that day. I was too ashamed and too embarrassed. Please look at me. Too ashamed and too embarrassed to tell her that I felt pity for you, despite what you had done to our daughter, to Makayla, to all of those kids that were out there that day, the impact on so many people. I still felt pity for you. I'm still struggling to find a way to forgive you, to not carry hatred. In my heart, you're a human being. I try to treat the world the way I want the world to treat me. What I treasure the most is my children, my daughter. You'll never know the treasure, the greatest treasure, the only thing that matters in life. It's not material things, not titles, not wealth. It's not power, it's love. And there's no greater love than the love between parents and children. You'll never know that. For that, I pity you. He also made sure that Cody knew that Lauren would have been the first person to have offered him help, had he ever asked her.
Cody, look at me. As I sat here and listened to you talk, this is the first time I'd ever heard your voice. The only time I had ever seen your face before was in the mugshot, and then in the pretrial hearings that we would go to. When I saw you in that mugshot, when I saw you in court, you looked evil, you looked hateful, you looked twisted. Look at me, please. You looked twisted, you looked evil. I had no pity on you. All I could think about was what you took from us, who you took from us. After you went for some treatment while you were gone, while you were being medicated, while you were trying to help you, and when you came back into court for the next hearing after that, when you walked in the room, immediately I was struck by the difference that I saw in you, that I saw in your face. And as I watched you that day, and I watched you sit in court and listen to the seriousness of what you had done, it seemed to me that you had finally had a realization of what you had done. And to me, you looked like a scared, lost little boy who was grasping for hope. I couldn't help but be touched by that, but to feel pity for you, for what you had done, to be that twisted inside, that empty, that lack of anything good, that you could do something like that. Despite myself, I felt ashamed of myself. I felt ashamed of myself for feeling pity for you. I didn't even tell my wife, I didn't tell Bianca that I felt that way. I didn't find out till last night that Bianca also that day felt those same things. I was too ashamed and too embarrassed. Please look at me. Too ashamed and too embarrassed to tell me that we felt pity for you. Despite what you had done to our daughter, to Makayla, to all those kids that were out there that day, the impact on so many people, I still felt pity for you. We're still struggling to try to find a way to forgive you, to not carry hatred. In my heart, you're a human being. I try to treat the world the way I want the world to treat what I treasure the most. It's my children, my daughter. You'll never know the treasure, the greatest treasure, the only thing that matters in life. It's not material things, not titles, it's not wealth, it's not power. It's love, and there's no greater love than the love of parents and children, between parents and children. You'll never know that. For that, I pity you. Choices that you made that day. The only thing that you said that was right was about how beautiful Lauren was. How she was an angel. She really was. She was sent down as a blessing. Part of our test in life. When you have a love like that you obviously don't know, there's nothing greater than that. It's the only thing you're going to take with you out of this life. It's what you have in your heart. And I do pity you for what's in your heart or what's not in your heart. The choices you made caused so many other people to suffer. We have no choice. The grief that you gave us, we'll live with that until we die, until we go home and see our daughter. We don't have a choice. Choices that you made, you're going to suffer the consequences now. You're not going to know the greatest gift in life. You're not going to know what it feels like to be a father, to hold a baby, a child that you helped make. What you're going to know, fear, pain, humiliation for what you've done. And the ironic thing about that
If Lauren had known you, had known the pain you had inside of you, if you had been able to reach out like a human being, that this is a good person I see, this is somebody, a light that I see, a goodness. If you'd have reached out to her and let her know how empty and hateful you felt inside, Lauren would have been the first one to try to help you. That's who she was. She's everything good and hopeful about humanity that you're not. And you're not ever going to have a chance to prove that. But you made your own bed. I don't pity you for that. You made your own choices. You're going to suffer the consequences of those choices. It will never equal, no matter what pain you feel, it will never equal the pain of losing a child so senselessly. And yes, it was senseless.
Makayla's mother also read out her victim impact statement, simply telling Cody that he was pure evil. The prosecution had requested the maximum sentence, which was life, but obviously that was up to the jury. And once again, though, the jury was on the prosecution's side. And they sentenced a now 22-year-old Cody Lott to life in prison plus an extra 20 years for the aggravated assault charge, along with a fine of $20,000. Despite the fact that he received life, under state law, he will be allowed to apply for parole after serving 30 years. When does life mean life? His defence, of course, immediately appealed the conviction, but thankfully the appeal was denied. So what then of Lauren's law that I talked about earlier? The Landavazos had started their fight for it in July, and by November of 2018, due to nothing having happened regarding it, they refiled it. It was too late to apply to their daughter's case, but they were determined to fight for it, so that any families affected by the same nightmare as them wouldn't have to go through the same sleepless nights as them, wondering what kind of sentence would be handed down. Finally, in June of 2019, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed Lauren's law, stating that it would officially go into effect on September the 1st that year, the day before the 3rd anniversary of Lauren Landavazo's murder. A lasting legacy for the girl whose light was snuffed out far too soon, and a fitting testament to the girl who always wanted to help others. This episode is, of course, dedicated to this remarkable young lady, with more than a nod for the strength and bravery of Makayla Smith. She is unquestionably a warrior who had no hesitation in doing the right thing and testifying in court. Thank you for watching another episode of Murder of Crows. Please consider subscribing if you haven't yet to stay up to date with my twice-weekly uploads that usually premiere on Mondays and Fridays. But with that being said, I'm Steve. Samson is just over here. Here he comes. I'm Steve. This is Samson. And we will see you when we see you.